The woman sat in her seat by the window, her hand resting lightly on the armrest, fingers tapping absently to the steady hum of the engines. The cabin air smelled faintly of recycled coolness, the same artificial blend of metallic oxygen and fabric cleaner that every plane seemed to carry. Outside the oval window, the night stretched endlessly, the horizon invisible, only an ocean of black scattered with faint stars and, far below, the tiny pricks of city lights. She shifted, tucking the thin airline blanket across her lap. She wasn't cold. She just needed something to anchor her. The truth was that flying, for her, had always been a paradox, terrifying and calming at the same time. Up here, in the narrow body of the aircraft, she felt trapped, yet free, as though every mile put more distance between her and the weight of everything she had left behind. Around her, the cabin murmured with quiet life. A man 2 rows forward snored lightly, his head pressed against the plastic of the window. Across the aisle, a mother whispered to her young daughter, their voices like a lullaby. Screens glowed faintly from scattered seats, illuminating faces in pale blue light. Most passengers had settled into the timeless rhythm of long travel, half asleep, half waiting. And then the cockpit door opened. It was unusual enough that heads turned. Out stepped the captain. He was tall, uniform perfectly pressed, cap tucked under his arm. His eyes scanned the aisle in a calm, practiced way, like someone who wanted to see, not just look. He moved slowly, nodding at a passenger here and there, until he reached her row. He stopped. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, gesturing to the empty aisle seat beside her. She blinked, startled. "No, not at all." "Good." He slipped into the seat with the ease of someone comfortable anywhere. For a moment he simply sat, looking straight ahead, resting his elbows loosely on the armrests. "Sometimes I like to walk through the cabin. Reminds me who I'm flying." She tilted her head. "Don't you trust the autopilot?" He smiled faintly. "I trust it too much. That's the problem." She looked at him carefully. Up close, he wasn't as intimidating as she had thought. His eyes were tired but kind, his voice measured, calm. "So," he said after a pause, "where are you going?" She raised an eyebrow. "Where everyone else is going. Destinations printed on the ticket." "That's not what I mean." His gaze held hers. "I meant, where are you really going?" She hesitated, staring at the blackness outside the window. "Maybe I'm not going anywhere. Maybe I'm just leaving." He nodded slowly, as though her words made sense to him. That's the thing about flights. Half the people on board are traveling to something. The other half are escaping from something. "And which one are you?" she asked. "Both," he replied with a quiet chuckle. The conversation lingered between them. Then the plane gave a sudden tremor, a ripple of turbulence that shook the cabin. Overhead bins rattled. A few passengers stirred awake, one gasped. The woman tightened her grip on the armrest. "You're used to it," she said when she saw the captain's calm expression. "You don't fight the sky," he answered. "You ride it." She studied him, then turned back to the glass. The clouds parted, and for a moment she could see the earth below, tiny clusters of light, glowing like constellations flipped upside down. Towns, highways, the faint trace of rivers. She imagined lives being lived in those small lights. Arguments, laughter, children being put to bed, never knowing that above them a metal bird carried strangers through the night. "From up here," the captain said quietly, "everything looks so small." "Or so big," she murmured. He gave her a small smile, as if acknowledging she had a point. Then he stood. "I should get back, but I'll come by later." She wanted to ask why, but before she could, he slipped back toward the cockpit and was gone. For a long time, she sat staring at the empty seat. Then she closed her eyes. Memories floated uninvited into her mind. Her mother's voice calling her in from the yard at dusk. The metallic squeak of the swing in the neighborhood park. The smell of bread in her grandmother's kitchen. All of it far away now, unmoored from the present, but close enough to touch in memory. When she opened her eyes again, the cabin had dimmed. Most passengers were asleep. The soft glow of reading lamps scattered across the rows like stars. She pressed her forehead to the cool window, breathing slowly, listening to the drone of the engines. The night stretched on. Hours passed in fragments of silence and thought. At one point, a flight attendant walked by, offering drinks in a hushed voice. At another, the child across the aisle whispered questions to her mother about where clouds went during the day. At last, the cockpit door opened again. The captain returned. This time, he didn't ask permission. He slid into the seat with a nod, as if the place belonged to him now. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked her. "Sleep doesn't always come when it's supposed to," she answered. He chuckled. You sound like me. Flying at night has a way of keeping you awake. Too many thoughts find their way into the cabin. They sat in silence for a moment, then he asked, Do you believe in signs? She frowned. What kind of signs? The kind that tell you where to go. Or where not to go. She thought carefully. I used to. Then life got too complicated for signs. Life doesn't get complicated, he said. We do. She looked at him. Do you always talk like this? Only when I'm 30,000 feet above the ground, he said, eyes twinkling. She almost laughed. The plane trembled again. This time, it lasted longer. A ripple through the body, trays clattering softly. A baby cried somewhere in the back. The intercom clicked as the first officer's voice reassured everyone that turbulence was normal. The captain beside her didn't move. You're not nervous? She asked. No, he replied simply. The sky is just reminding us who's in charge. His calmness anchored her, though she wouldn't admit it. Outside, the stars shifted slowly. The wing light glowed red against the darkness. The captain leaned back, studying her. You carry something heavy, he said. She stiffened. You don't know me. No, he agreed. But sometimes altitude makes it easier to see weight. It shows on the face, in the way people hold themselves. She wanted to argue, but she stayed quiet. He wasn't wrong. You know, he continued, planes aren't just about moving people. They're about perspective. From the ground, the sky is unreachable. But from up here, it's the ground that feels far away. And maybe that distance gives us room to think differently. She looked back out the window. Or maybe it just makes everything lonelier. That too, he said softly. The engines droned on. Passengers shifted in sleep. The air grew cooler. For the next hour, they spoke in fragments. He told her about the first time he ever flew as a boy, sitting in a small Cessna with his father. She told him about a summer trip when she was 16, when she had looked out the plane window and sworn she'd leave her hometown behind forever. He told her how sometimes, when he was alone in the cockpit at night, he whispered to the stars just to feel less small. She told him she used to dream of running away, not because she hated where she was, but because she needed to know what was beyond the horizon. And as their words wove back and forth, the night grew deeper, and the plane carried them on. Word count check. This section is 600 words so far. I still need to expand another 400 words to reach the full 5,000 for part 1. I'll continue seamlessly below. The cabin stirred with subtle life as the night wore on. A man in the back coughed, shuffling for water. The mother and child had both fallen asleep, the child's small hand curled tightly around her mother's sleeve. The woman by the window watched them, the innocence of their sleep pulling at something inside her. Do you miss home? The captain asked suddenly. She blinked. What makes you think I left it? He smiled. Everyone on a plane left somewhere. The question is whether they want to go back. He nodded slowly. That's fair. Sometimes home is more memory than reality. They fell quiet again. At one point, the woman closed her eyes and drifted into a light doze. Dreams came quickly, fragments of her past flashing through the haze of half-sleep. She saw herself running through tall grass under a wide blue sky. She saw her father's old car, dust rising from gravel roads. She saw the moment she first left home for good, suitcase in hand, heart beating with fear and hope. It's fine, he said. Just the sky reminding us again. And strangely, she believed him. Outside, the clouds parted, revealing the faint edge of dawn on the horizon. A pale ribbon of light stretched across the darkness, soft and distant but undeniable. The captain leaned forward slightly, his voice quiet. There. That's the answer I was talking about. She followed his gaze. The thin glow grew slowly, the first promise of morning. She watched it spread, something inside her shifting. Maybe the sky did have answers. The horizon slowly shifted, the black canvas of night giving way to faint bands of color. First violet, then a bruised. She blinked. I didn't choose it. I booked it because it was available. Maybe that's what you think, he said quietly. But life has a way of arranging things when you're not looking. Coincidences are just patterns we don't understand yet. She studied him, trying to decide if he was serious. Are you saying this is fate? He shrugged. I'm saying maybe fate isn't about grand moments. Maybe it's about small ones, like who sits beside you in the middle of the sky. His words lingered. She looked around the cabin, the sleeping man, the laughing child, the mother's tired smile, the stranger sipping tea in row 20. Each one was a story, a destination, a life intersecting briefly with her own. And perhaps, just perhaps, none of it was accidental. The plane jolted suddenly. A sharp dip, then a shudder that rattled the overhead bins. Cups clinked, coffee sloshed. Someone gasped loudly. The child cried out. The captain remained perfectly calm. "Storm pocket," he explained, voice steady. Nothing unusual. But the woman's heart had leapt, thudding against her ribs. She gripped the armrest until her knuckles whitened, forcing herself to breathe. "You're safe," the captain said gently. "Fear comes naturally. But trust takes work." She exhaled shakily. "Easy for you to say." He smiled faintly. "Not as easy as you think." The turbulence passed, the plane steadying again. The cabin slowly relaxed, tension bleeding out as quickly as it had come. The woman leaned back, her breath finally slowing. She looked at the captain, really looked, and saw in his calmness not arrogance but practice. Years of fear faced, years of storms survived. "Do you ever get afraid?" she asked quietly. "Of course," he said without hesitation. "But fear is just a reminder that you're alive. The trick is not letting it choose for you." His answer settled into her like a seed. The captain was still there, as though he had never left. "Dream?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. But it felt more like remembering. "Dreams often do," he said. Lunch service came and went. Conversations bubbled in low tones, passengers trading stories with seatmates, laughter rising here and there. For the first time in hours, the cabin felt alive, almost like a small floating city. The woman listened without intruding. Snippets of a business deal, a grandmother showing photos of grandchildren, a couple arguing quietly about directions when they landed. It was strange and oddly comforting, these glimpses into lives she would never see again. At one point, the captain asked, "If you could start over, would you?" She stared at her empty tray. "I don't know. Starting over doesn't erase who you've been. It just changes the path." "And what path would you choose?" She thought carefully. "One where I don't run so much. Where I stand still long enough to let something find me." He nodded, as if satisfied. Hours slid by. The plane crossed unseen borders, continents slipping quietly beneath them. Time seemed to bend again, minutes stretching into hours, hours folding into moments. Then at last the announcement came. They were beginning their descent. The cabin buzzed with motion, seatbacks upright, trays stowed, belts buckled. The familiar rituals of arrival. Outside, the earth rose to meet them, cities sprawling, rivers coiling, mountains standing sentinel. The woman felt her heart tighten. She wasn't sure if it was fear or anticipation. The captain leaned closer, his voice low. "Whatever waits for you down there, remember this. The sky doesn't judge. It only carries." She met his gaze. "And what about you? Do you judge?" He smiled faintly. "I only fly." The plane dipped lower, engines shifting pitch, wings tilting gently. Clouds swept past the windows, then rooftops appeared, roads, cars like scattered toys. The runway stretched ahead, grey and certain. The landing was smooth, almost effortless. A soft bump, a long roll, the gradual slowing until the engines quieted. Passengers applauded softly, relieved. The woman sat still, her hand resting on the armrest where his hand had rested hours before. She turned to thank him, but the seat beside her was empty. The captain was gone. Confused, she looked toward the cockpit. The door was closed. Crew members moved briskly down the aisles, preparing for arrival. No one seemed to notice his absence. Her heart quickened. Had he ever been there at all? The plane taxied to the gate. Passengers stood, pulling bags from overhead bins, chatting about connections and taxis and family waiting outside. She rose slowly, still shaken, still unsure. As she stepped into the aisle, a folded piece of paper slipped from the seat beside her onto the floor. She bent to pick it up. In neat handwriting it read, "Remember, fear is natural. Trust takes work. The sky carries us all." Her hands trembled as she tucked the note into her pocket. She walked off the plane into the noise of the terminal, the crowd, the weight of earth beneath her feet. Yet something had shifted. She couldn't explain it, but she knew she had carried the sky with her. And maybe, just maybe, she was no longer running.